On our channel we tell the latest breaking news and stories around the world. If you don't want to miss anything, subscribe now. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the USSR and the man despised by Vladimir Putin and Russian nationalists for ending the Cold War while failing to prevent the collapse of the Soviet Union, has died at the age of 91. The Central Clinical Hospital in Moscow said that the former Soviet leader died after a serious and long illnesses but gave no other details. Gorbachev had been suffering from long-term kidney problems and was on dialysis and was confined to a clinic during the pandemic. Though in power less than 7 years, the USSR's last general secretary unleashed a series of reforms that resulted in breathtaking changes, including the reunification of Germany, the collapse of Stalin's empire, the liberation of Eastern European nations including Poland, Ukraine and the Baltic republics from decades of Russian domination, and the end of the nuclear confrontation with the West. On becoming General Secretary of the Soviet Communist Party in 1985, aged just 54, Gorbachev inherited an empire in decline and set out to revitalize the system by introducing limited political and economic freedoms. His policy of glasnost, free speech, allowed previously unthinkable criticism of the party and the state, but it also emboldened nationalists who began to press for independence in the Baltic republics of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and elsewhere. Gorbachev largely refrained from using force to handle the pro-democracy protests which swept across the Soviet bloc nations of Eastern Europe in 1989, unlike previous Kremlin leaders who had sent tanks to crush uprisings in Hungary in 1956 and Czechoslovakia in 1968, and in stark contrast to the Tiananmen Square massacre by China in the same year. However, he was unable to keep a lid on the aspirations for autonomy in the 15 republics of the USSR, and his authority was fatally undermined after surviving a shambolic coup by hardliners in August 1991 that fell apart after 3 days. 4 months later, his great rival, Boris Yeltsin, engineered the breakup of the Soviet Union and Gorbachev resigned on Christmas Day, the USSR effectively writing itself into oblivion. Though the West celebrated the demise of Stalin's Soviet Union, Russians never forgave Gorbachev for the turbulence that his reforms unleashed, considering the subsequent plunge in their living standards too high a price to pay for democracy. A quarter century after the collapse, Gorbachev said he had not considered using widespread force to try to keep the USSR together because he feared chaos in a nuclear country. The country was loaded to the brim with weapons, and it would have immediately pushed the country into a civil war, he told the Associated Press. Many of the changes, including the Soviet breakup, bore no resemblance to the transformation that Gorbachev had envisioned when he became the Soviet leader in March 1985. By the end of his rule, he was powerless to halt the whirlwind he had sown. Yet Gorbachev may have had a greater impact on the second half of the 20th century than any other political figure. I see myself as a man who started the reforms that were necessary for the country and for Europe and the world, Gorbachev told in 1992 in an interview shortly after he left office. I am often asked, would I have started it all again if I had to repeat it? Yes, indeed. And with more persistence and determination, he said. Gorbachev won the 1990 Nobel Peace Prize for his role in ending the Cold War and spent his later years collecting accolades and awards from all corners of the world. He will be buried in Moscow near his wife Raisa, who died in 1999. If you don't want to miss another breaking news and stories around the world, subscribe to our channel now.